Harass me for having white hair? Have fun covering my shifts. Hello, Malicious Compliance. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. On mobile, so sorry for any formatting issues. It's a long one. I like story time. This happened about 2 years ago. I worked for a very popular supermarket chain in Australia. I had been shunted there after their sister company went belly up. Now, I love dyeing my hair crazy colors. It's a quirk. It makes me feel more confident in myself, and as someone with social anxiety, it was a great pick-me-up when I was feeling down. When I first got transferred there, I had blue dreadlocks, and we had a male manager. There was never any issues with my hair or dress standards, and I took pride in my work and worked hard. About a year after, we got a new store manager. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah had very clear-cut ideas about how her store should be run, and importantly, how her employees should look. At this stage, I had taken my dreads out and just had short purple hair. According to the employee guidelines, employees should appear professional and hygienic at all times. No mention of hair color whatsoever. However, the phrase professional is open to interpretation by management. You can see where this is going. It began as passing comments on my hair, such as, "Wow, that's bright," etc. But as other employees began coloring their hair, Sarah sent out a memo that no unnatural hair colors were allowed. It was very sad. Colored hair was part of my identity and gave me the confidence I needed to interact with 200 plus customers a day. I decided I would bleach my hair snow white. So I did. Now, if any of you have done this before, you would know you need to use purple shampoo to counterbalance that brassy, bleach yellow tone to keep it white. This is a fine balancing act. Don't leave the shampoo in long enough and you have yellow hair still. But too long and your hair can get tinged pastel purple. Well, on a few occasions, I left it in a little too long, and my hair was the slightest shade of purple. Not even pastel, only just off a light gray color. Well, that was all Sarah needed to gun for me, going as far as to threaten to send me home without pay. As this was going on, I had become friendly with the bottle store next to the supermarket, under the same parent company, but a different chain of command. I would cover their shift's breaks, and instead of standing around like the others do, I would face up the store and help out. Well, the manager had noticed my efforts and poached me. The best part? Because they had a different chain of command and a different interpretation of the employee guidelines, I was allowed to have colored hair again. I immediately took up the offer, and the night before my first shift there, set about making my hair an effing rainbow. I get in there. My new manager loves my hair. My customers are raving about it, asking how I got it so bright, what brand of dye, etc. Well, good old Sarah spots my beacon of a head from across the supermarket and beelines it straight for me. But I was ready for her. I printed the employee guidelines and called our HR team just to get further clarification that I was correct in my interpretation. I had customers in the store, but this didn't stop her from trying to tear into me. Sarah, "You can't have hair like that." Me, hands her the paperwork. "Actually, I can. My manager has no problem with my hair, and the guidelines say nothing about hair color." Sarah, "You're gonna make my employees think that is acceptable." Me, "When your employees mention my hair, I tell them straight out that it is not allowed in your store." Sarah, "This isn't the last of it. I'm going to HR about this." My new manager later told me that Sarah had gone over her head to try and have me relocated to another store, and went to her area manager and complained to him about me. She was told in no uncertain terms that my hair color is not against the rules, that she is out of line to even reprimand me in the first place, and that if she does not cease her harassment, she would have to take a permanent vacation. Epilogue. Over the next year, I would change my hair to some other crazy color combination at least weekly. I love the look on her face every time I walk past. My mental health has gotten so much better since leaving that toxic work environment. I feel bad for my ex-coworkers who still live under her tyranny though. I gotta say, the only part of this story that really disappoints me is not getting to see the manager's face when you come in with a full rainbow on your head. That must have been interesting. You specified the law, Mr. Lawyer. Back in 2014, I was a support analyst for a company that made and hosted medical screening applications and healthcare registries. One of the registries was for medical implants and covered England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. It was the largest of its kind in the world, and as such, we received data requests from organizations and government agencies from all over the world. One of my pet peeves was people mentioning the Freedom of Information Act, FOI, repeatedly, as if we'd never heard of it. They'd put it in the subject line, on any attachments, and a few times in the email. You didn't actually need to quote the FOI, just ask the damn question and we'll process it for you. Annoying, but nothing major. Then one day, I got an email that sent my inner bastard off. The email was from some lawyer in Edinburgh, and he'd done the same thing, but with slight differences. He'd quoted repeatedly the Freedom of Information Scotland Act. It was mentioned at least 6 or 7 times in the email, plus the subject line, comprising about 40% of the total text, or so it seemed. The whole email was rather blunt, demanding, a touch patronizing, and then ended with the threat of legal action if we didn't comply. Completely unnecessary, and I just couldn't let it go. I did some research to check my understanding, and confirmed my suspicions. He very specifically and repeatedly quoted the FOI, Scotland, and he is a lawyer, so he should know the law, right? I sent him an email acknowledging receipt, then did nothing for 28 days. On day 28, I sent another email advising that the Medical Implant Registry of England, Wales, and Northern Ireland does not operate in Scotland, and therefore we don't retain or process any data that falls under the FOI, Scotland. I ended it by saying, if he'd like to resubmit his request under the FOI, we'd be happy to process it within the 28-day limit. You gotta love these stories that are just so juicy that you can almost hear this guy screaming at his computer on the other end of the email. Just following the dress code. A couple years ago, I worked retail in a store geared towards children. A very magical store. Lots of princesses, superheroes, rodents, you get the picture. Our store had about 25 female employees, including all of management, and 3 male employees. The dress code was incredibly strict. We had a uniform that had to be ironed all the time. No visible tattoos, only natural hair colors. Women were encouraged to wear makeup and style their hair. Men were either to be clean-shaven or have fully grown-in facial hair. For some reason, one particular manager was intent on nitpicking me regarding the dress code, even when I was in complete compliance of it. I was constantly told that I needed to iron it better, so I started getting it dry cleaned. And somehow that still wasn't enough. I wore very minimal makeup, and she constantly told me I should wear more, though she couldn't make me. Hair bows were a big thing at the store, and people made and gave as presents, custom ones highlighting characters. They weren't exactly against dress code, but they did push the limits. Regardless, this particular manager seemingly only had an issue with them when I wore them. Once she got down on her hands and knees with a ruler to prove my pant hem was too long, only to be proven wrong. There were also some conversations about my appearance that, looking back, were definitely body shaming. As a side note, this particular manager was a natural brunette, but she dyed her hair black and bleached a portion of the hair underneath so that it would show. She was a self-proclaimed broho, if you need a more clear idea. Point is, her hair pushed the edge of what I would consider natural. I got the itch to dye my hair, and before working for the store, I had always loved to color my hair all sorts of colors. However, with the dress code, only natural hair colors were allowed. So I came up with a compromise: silver. I went and had my hair professionally lightened and dyed silver. The next day I worked, the district and regional manager were visiting the store. I was always picked to work those days because I had the best stage presence and knowledge of the company, and those two were always impressed by me. When I showed up to work that day with my new shiny silver hair, my store managers were appalled. They wanted to send me home immediately, and for whatever reason, they decided to talk to me in front of their higher-ups. This is a paraphrasing of the convo. You're in major violation of the dress code. How so? Your hair isn't a natural color. Yes, it is. Gray is a natural color. But you aren't gray yet. So it looks unnatural to be all gray. Are you saying that we can't dye our hair at all if it's not a color that would grow out of our heads naturally at this moment? No, you can dye your hair. It just can't be obviously fake. It needs to look real. I pointed at the manager who was constantly on me. Your hair is half black and half bleach blonde. I feel like that looks more unnatural than my gray hair. I turned to the two higher-ups and asked if I was in violation. They agreed with me that I was not. I also showed them one of my bows, and they fawned over it, and even asked me for directions on how to make one. In the end, I got to keep my silver hair and my bows, and my manager was told that her hair actually was a dress code violation, and she had to dye it before coming in the next day. So I'm going to assume that this is the Disney store and not Disney World or Disneyland, so I gotta ask, who cares either way? I mean, why does it matter if someone has natural hair or a little bit weird hair? These aren't high-level executive jobs, they're mostly entry-level jobs, so why are they so nitpicky? Alright guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today. I hope you enjoyed the stories, and if you did and you're new around here, maybe consider subscribing. And if you really liked it, well then maybe consider giving it a thumbs up or a share. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.